My dad stood up in front of the whole family, and called me the loser. I didn't argue. I just placed a sealed envelope in front of him, and walked out. What was inside? Let's just say, he didn't see it coming. It happened at our big family reunion. Everyone was there, uncles, aunties, cousins, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. People were laughing, eating, catching up on life. It felt almost nice. Then, my dad raised his glass. He said, "I'm proud of all my children." He paused. Smiled. Looked around. Then said, "Except the loser who never fit in." The room went silent for a second. Then came the awkward chuckles. You know the kind, when people laugh, but deep down, they know it wasn't funny. No one said anything. Not even my siblings. They just looked down. But me? I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stood up, walked to the table, and placed a sealed envelope right in front of my dad. "This is for you, Dad," I said. "Happy Father's Day." Then I left. No drama. No screaming. Just me, walking out the door with my dignity. And yes, I took back the luxury car I had gifted him the year before. 10 minutes later, I heard he opened the envelope. And screamed. Yeah. Screamed. What was in the envelope? Let's just say, it was something he never expected, but maybe something he deserved. But I'll save that part for the next video. Right now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like your family only accepts the version of you that fits their idea of who you should be? Because that day, I realized something deep. Sometimes, silence is more powerful than shouting. And the truth? It doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be real. So tell me. What would you do if your parent humiliated you in front of everyone? Would you fight back, or walk away? The funny thing is, on the outside, I looked fine. Calm. Controlled. But inside? I was shaking. Not from fear, but from years of buried hurt finally boiling to the surface. You see, this wasn't the first time he embarrassed me. It was just the first time I chose not to stay silent in my silence. When I got to my car, I just sat there. Engine running. Looking at that house full of people who had always treated me like the odd one out. The one who didn't follow the family blueprint. The one who didn't go into the family business. The one who didn't marry who they wanted. The one who dreamed bigger than the family limits. And for that, they called me the disappointment. The outsider. The loser. But what they didn't know. That envelope didn't just contain a message. It held proof. Receipts. The real reason I had become the one person in that family who no longer needed approval. He thought he could shame me. What he didn't know was, I had been building my exit for years. Silently. Patiently. While they laughed at me, I was building something they'd never understand. Inside that envelope was a truth he couldn't run from. A truth that would hit harder than any insult he ever threw at me. And when he opened it. Let's just say, my aunt told me later. He went pale. Dropped his drink. And for the first time in his life. He had nothing to say. But me? I wasn't even there to see it. Because I had already decided. If being myself makes me the loser, then I'll wear that title with pride, because at least it's mine. And as I drove away, one thought kept repeating in my head. You don't owe your family your silence just to keep the peace. Especially when they're the ones causing the war. As I drove away, the messages started coming in. From cousins. From my younger sister. Even from one of my dad's old friends who had never spoken to me before. Are you okay? What was in that envelope? He's been pacing the living room like he saw a ghost. He's yelling, but no one knows why. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. But because I had already said everything I needed to say, without even opening my mouth. That envelope. It wasn't just paper and ink. It was everything he ignored. Everything he chose not to see. Everything I carried alone for years. Until I decided not to carry it anymore. I sat at a quiet cafe that evening, sipping coffee, still wearing the same outfit from the reunion. One lady beside me asked if I was okay. I smiled and said, "I've never been more free." What was in the envelope? Let's just say, it told his truth, not mine. And when the truth shows up, it doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door wide open. Part 2 is coming. And in it, I'll show you exactly what was in the envelope, and why he'll never forget it. But before then, have you ever written a letter you never sent? Ever thought about what you'd say if you didn't have to hold back? Because sometimes, the words we're too scared to speak are the ones that set us free. Let me know in the comments. What would you have put inside that envelope? I didn't go home that night. I booked a quiet hotel room. No calls. No texts. Just peace. Meanwhile, back at the reunion, I heard things got weird. My dad had stopped talking. People tried to comfort him. But he just kept staring at the envelope. Like it was haunted. He eventually opened it. And when he read what was inside, he stood up, grabbed his jacket, and left his own party. Imagine that. The man who always had the last word suddenly had none. I didn't expect the fallout to come so fast. But maybe that's what happens when someone finally shows you the mirror you've spent your whole life avoiding. The next morning, I got a message from my cousin. She left crying. She meant my mom. Apparently, after reading what was inside, my dad tried to act like it meant nothing. But his hands were shaking. He locked himself in his study. Didn't come out for hours. And my mom? She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. I'm not saying what I did was perfect. Or easy. But I am saying this. Sometimes you reach a point where holding it in hurts more than letting it out. And I had reached that point years ago. I just didn't know it until he said those words. Except the loser who never fit in. It's funny. For years, I tried to become someone he could be proud of. I worked hard. Tried to impress him. Even bought him that luxury car on his birthday last year. Thinking maybe that would change something. It didn't. Because people who only love a version of you will always reject the real you. So I gave up trying. And started healing instead. That envelope. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. Wrapped in silence. Delivered with calm. And received with chaos. But I haven't told you what was actually inside. Not yet. Because to understand that, you'd need to know what happened 3 years ago. Something my father thought I'd buried forever. Something he prayed no one would ever find out. And no, it wasn't illegal. But it was worse than that. It was personal. It was deep. It was something that made even me question if I ever really knew who he was. And that's when everything changes. But for now, I just want to ask. Have you ever found the courage to stand up to someone you once thought you'd never confront? Have you ever had to choose between your family and your peace? Because I did. And once I chose peace, I never looked back. 3 years ago, I found out something that changed how I saw my dad, forever. It was a normal day. Nothing dramatic. Until I got a phone call from someone I didn't recognize. Is this your name? Yes. You don't know me, but I think you deserve to know what your father did. At first, I thought it was a scam. But then she mentioned something only someone close to him would know. And what she said next. It hit like a punch to the chest. Turns out, my dad had been living a double life. Not another family. Not a crime. But something worse. He had been telling people I was a failure. Privately mocking my journey. Taking credit for my success. And telling others he only kept me around out of pity. Even worse. He had used my name to get access, favors, even money. All while telling me to stay humble and be grateful he let me live under his roof for so long. He would show off my accomplishments in public. But in private, He called me his mistake. And the person who told me was someone he once trusted. Someone who used to believe in him, until they saw what he really was behind closed doors. I kept it all to myself for 3 years. Didn't say a word. Didn't confront him. I just kept building. Quietly. On my own terms. Waiting for the right moment. And that moment came the day he stood up at the family reunion. And called me the loser who never fit in. That envelope. It didn't just hold what he said behind my back. It held proof. Voice notes. Screenshots. Statements. The very things he never imagined I had. But it also held something else. Something he truly didn't see coming. Something that shook him deeper than the evidence itself. And in the final episode, I'm going to show you exactly what it was. And why he screamed when he opened it. When my dad called me the loser in front of the entire family, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just calmly walked over, placed a sealed envelope on the table, and said, "This is for you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." Then I walked out. Silently. Took back the luxury car I had gifted him the year before. And reclaimed something I hadn't felt in a long time, my dignity. Now let me tell you what was inside that envelope. The first page was a printout of every message, every audio clip, every conversation where he had mocked me behind my back. Things he said to his friends. To my siblings. Even to business contacts I introduced him to. He told them I was a waste of space. Said I was barely surviving. Called my dreams a fantasy he allowed me to play with. He used my name to get into rooms I built. Then told people I was nothing without him. But that was just the first part. The second page was a legal notice. I had officially revoked his access to everything I once gave him. The car. Gone. The business contacts. Cut off. The home I helped renovate. Legally removed his name from the deed. Everything I gave him out of love. I took back out of respect for myself. But the last page. That's what broke him. It was a letter. Handwritten. By me. Here's what it said. Dear Dad. For years, I tried to be enough for you. Enough to earn your love. Enough to make you proud. Enough to feel like your child. But today, I realized something, I was always enough. You just chose not to see it. This envelope isn't revenge. It's release. I'm letting go of the pain, the pretending, and the need for your approval. You don't get to call me a loser anymore. And you don't get to benefit from the person you tried to break. I'm done being your shadow. From now on, I walk in my own light. Goodbye. When he read that, I was told he went completely silent. Didn't speak for the rest of the day. Some say he cried. Others say he sat there for hours, just staring into space. Me? I didn't go back to check. Because that chapter of my life closed the moment I stopped begging to be accepted by someone who never really saw me. And I realized something powerful. You can love someone deeply, and still walk away when they refuse to love you with respect. So if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong. If your family only loves the version of you that plays by their rules. If they call you the black sheep, the failure, or the disappointment. Let me tell you something. You are not the problem. You are just no longer willing to shrink yourself for their comfort. And that's not being a loser. That's being free. So, what would you have done if you were me? Would you have handed them the truth? Or stayed quiet for the sake of peace? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes, the loudest statement you'll ever make is the one you deliver in silence.